Hi there, and welcome to Her Season of Strength, where women over 40 reclaim their bodies, their energy, and their voices without apologies. I'm Kim Duffy, registered dietitian, personal trainer, mom, and your biggest hype woman when it comes to aging like you mean it. This show isn't about chasing skinny or counting wrinkles. It's about building real strength, physical, emotional, and hormonal. Each week, I'll share straight-talking nutrition tips, sustainable fitness strategies, and conversations that help you feel powerful in your skin once again. Menopause isn't an ending, it's only the beginning. This is your season of strength. Hello, and welcome back to Her Season of Strength. My name is Kim Duffy, and I'm so happy you're here just taking a minute or two while you're walking or doing your chores or whatever to listen in. So today's topic it's very similar. Like last week I talked about, hearing an influencer talk about the 90-minute coffee rule. You can't have coffee for at least 90 minutes after you wake up in the morning, or it's just going to spike your cortisol. So I talked about that in last episode, after hearing an influencer saying that. And today I got even something a little bit different. So I got an email from a trainer that I used to use, who is a 40-year-old man. And the subject line of the email said, "Menopause does not cause weight gain." And I read that and I don't know, it just kind of bothered me not because I think that men can't be great trainers or great coaches, but this is a 40-year-old man who's never had a hot flash, never had a period disappear, never, watched his own body change shape overnight. And he's not a doctor. And he's out here making a blanket statement to, however many women that follow him or that work out with him about their own hormones. Like it's just this settled science. It's all in your head. If you're gaining weight, it's all in your head during menopause. So here's why that matters so much to me, because when you're in the middle of menopause and your body is, it's different. It's doing things you don't recognize. And someone with a platform tells you that's not even real. It's not the hormones. It's just you not having enough willpower or not being motivated enough to keep that weight off, not wanting to deprive yourself enough. And what that does is it actually makes you feel a bit crazy. It makes you feel like you're failing, like you're not trying hard enough, when the truth is your body's running on a completely different set of rules, post-menopause versus pre-menopause. So today I'm not going to give you my opinion versus his opinion. I'm giving you the actual science on one very specific, very well-documented mechanism. And that is how the drop in estrogen during menopause increases our insulin resistance, right? And why that matters so much for our weight, our energy, our cravings, and our long-term health. And I want to break it down into just very simplest way, because I know you don't need a biology lesson today, and I don't want you to need a biology degree to understand what I'm talking about. But by the end of this episode, I hope you understand a little bit better about exactly, why blood sugar stability and insulin sensitivity, they're really the foundation of everything I teach my clients. And also I want to talk a little bit about that's kind of the whole system that I teach in that 12-week sustained program, which we're coming up on here in a couple months. So let's talk just for a second. So before we talk about estrogen, I want to back up and talk specifically about insulin, because I want you to really understand this. So insulin is a hormone, right? No, progesterone and testosterone and estrogen are not the only hormones. We have so many hormones in our body, and insulin is a super, super important one. So when you eat and your blood sugar goes up, insulin's job is to kind of unlock your cells so that extra sugar in your bloodstream can move out of your bloodstream and into your cells. And that's where it is used as energy. So if you think of, insulin is the key and your cell is that locked door, when everything's working the way it should, that key slides in, the door opens easily, and sugar just walks right on in and gets put to work. Now, insulin resistance is what happens when, say, that lock gets a little rusty, the key still, shows up, insulin's still there, it's knocking on the door, but the door doesn't open as easily anymore. So sugar sits out in your bloodstream longer than it's supposed to. And here's a super interesting part is when your body senses that sugar isn't getting into those cells fast enough, your pancreas, which is just that organ that produces and secretes insulin, it gets almost kind of more worked up. It panics a little, and it starts pumping out more and more insulin to try to force that door open, to try to bring those blood sugars down. So insulin resistance doesn't mean, that you typically does not mean that you have too little of insulin. Most of the time, it means that you have too much in your bloodstream. So one of the ways that they can check that is they can look at your serum insulin. And if those levels are high, it can mean that your body is more resistant to insulin. Because your body is working overtime to compensate for those rusty locks. And it matters way more than just blood sugar numbers. I know a lot of people are thinking, but I don't have diabetes. Why do I care about blood sugars? Chronically high insulin is linked to more fat storage, more fatigue, more cravings, and over time, a much higher risk of type 2 diabetes as well as other chronic illnesses. Increases risk of cardiovascular disease, of different cancers, because typically you're going to have a lot more inflammation in your body overall when those blood sugars are running high. So now let's talk a little bit about where the estrogen piece comes in. We tend to think of estrogen as just, it's that hormone that, gives us our periods and helps us to get pregnant, right? But estrogen's, it's super involved in how your cells respond to insulin. It's kind of working behind the scenes for your metabolism every single day. So here's 3 things that estrogen is doing for your blood sugar control. First, it helps keep those locks working. It helps your muscle cells to stay sensitive to insulin signal. That's a lot of S's. Sorry about that. It helps your muscle cells to stay sensitive to insulin signal, which makes it easier for sugar to get out of your blood and into those muscles where it can actually be used for energy or stored properly. Secondly, estrogen protects what I like to call your insulin factory, which is your pancreas. It helps protect those cells that produce insulin from damage and from burnout so that they don't overwork themselves just to keep up. And third, estrogen kind of has a say in where your body stores fat. It influences whether fats get stored under the skin, if you think about like your hips or your thighs, or around your organs in your belly, which we call visceral fat. And visceral fat isn't just sitting there doing nothing. It's metabolically active, but not in a good way. It releases those inflammatory compounds that can make insulin resistance even worse. So now let's picture kind of what happens as estrogen declines during menopause. Those locks on our cells get a little rustier, so we become less insulin sensitive. And our pancreas has to work harder to compensate for that. Fat starts shifting towards our belly or our midsection instead of our hips and thighs. And I want to express how this is not a willpower problem. This is not a, you slacking off or not being able to say no to the cookies or the treats. It's a hormonal shift. It has real biological mechanisms behind it. Researchers have studied exactly how estrogen affects glucose transport into your cells, how it protects those insulin-producing cells in your pancreas, and how it influences fat redistribution during the menopause transition. This is science. This isn't a theory. This isn't just like, it's all in your head, right? So now let's connect the dots, because kind of this is where we pull it together. So when your insulin sensitivity gets rustier, you end up with more insulin that's circulating in your bloodstream. And another word for that is hyperinsulinemia, just in case you wanted to know. And insulin is a storage hormone. So its job when it's high is to tell your body to hold on to fat rather than release it to be burned for fuel. So higher insulin literally makes it harder for your body to let go of fat. This is also why cravings and energy crashes tend to get worse, like in menopause, because when insulin, it's not doing its job smoothly, those blood sugar highs and lows, that lovely roller coaster we're on, can become bigger. And those swings are exactly what drive that shaky, hangry, I need sugar right now. I need a pick-me-up. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. And here's kind of the tricky part. It becomes a loop. So more visceral fat contributes to more insulin resistance. More insulin resistance contributes to more visceral fat. It goes round and round and round. And this is really the loop I help my clients to break. If you want a honest science-backed caveat here, because I promised you real information, not just something that sounds good. It doesn't mean every single pound gained in midlife is purely hormonal. I am not saying that, because, sometimes we're not as active as we get older. Maybe, joints are hurting. We need knee replacements, hip replacements, and stuff like that. Sleep can be harder, right? We're not sleeping as well. We're up during the night. Our body is not getting the rest it needs. Sometimes stress can go up. We definitely see that muscle mass declines, and that's age-related as well as estrogen-related. All of these things play a role. But the insulin resistance piece is kind of one of the most well-documented. It's the most actionable one that we can make changes on, which is exactly why it's where I want you to start, because it doesn't matter. Even if you're someone who's like, oh yeah, no problem, I'm not insulin resistant, I'm sensitive, my fasting blood sugars have been fine, my hemoglobin A1C has been fine, it does not mean that eating this way is not beneficial for you. It is beneficial for every single one of us. So now just kind of bringing this back to that lovely email that I got. Technically, no single hormone shift guarantees weight gain for every single woman, because bodies are different, genetics are different. But to stand up and say this blanket statement, menopause does not cause weight gain, full stop, ignores, the measurable biology that changes how your body handles blood sugar and where it stores fat. That statement isn't just incomplete, it's just dismissive of what so many of you are actually living through, as well as me. So here is the message that I really want you to walk away with, instead of, it's not menopause is happening to you and there's nothing you can do. It's menopause changes the rules of the game. So we have to change our strategy. Okay? This is exactly why stabilizing blood sugars and rebuilding that insulin sensitivity, it's really the foundation of everything I teach my clients. It's not about just the number on the scale, but better insulin sensitivity can mean more stable energy throughout your day. It can mean decreased cravings. It can mean that you have an easier time losing excess fat, more capacity to build real muscle and strength, and lower long-term risk of chronic disease. This is, one thing, that one change that touches almost everything the grand majority of people are trying to change or to do, their goals. So this is exactly what I work with, the exact framework and system, which focuses on stabilizing blood sugar and rebuilding that insulin sensitivity. It's just the entire foundation of my 12-week sustained program, which I'm launching in just a couple of months. So if you're not already on the priority list, to jump on there. That's where I'm sharing all of the newest details. That's where, if you're on this program, you will be offered the lowest price for the program, as well as any cool bonuses that I'm going to be offering up. So it's not something I'm going to open up to everyone all at once. So get on that list now and, make sure you don't miss it. Head to the link. I'll put the link in the show notes. So just to make it nice and easy, you can just click on there to get onto the priority list. And if this episode helped you connect the dots on, insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity that you've been struggling with in your own body. I'd love for you to follow this podcast, share it with a friend who might be struggling with the same thing or hearing the same kind of dismissive things from other, influencers or even providers, because we need to remember this is about progress over perfection. We're in this for the long haul, and this is your season of strength. Have an amazing day.